مرحبا بكم مشاهدينا في حوارات السياق. وافق مجلس النواب الليبي بالأغلبية على اختيار فتحي بشاغة رئيسا لحكومة جديدة على الرغم من رفض رئيس الوزراء الحالي عبد الحميد دبيبة التنحي عن منصبه، وهو ما قد يفتح الباب أمام انقسام جديد وصراع بين حكومتين ربما في البلاد. عموما المزيد من المتابعة حول هذا الملف تنضم إلينا آية بورويلة مؤسسة منظمة كود أون ذا رود. آية مرحبا بك معنا.
هاي حسينة.
تفسيرك آية لما حدث في البرلمان؟ دبيبة كان سبق الأمور وصرح بأنه غير مغادر، ما الذي يعنيه ذلك؟
Today, the Libyan parliament chose to change the personnel of the government of national unity and replace Prime Minister Dbeiba with فتحي Bashagha. Well, it was clear that he never planned to leave. He never planned to have elections. And he had spent all his time as the Prime Minister of the GNU lobbying to postpone the elections indefinitely and to sabotage elections. So his response is not surprising. It's very typical for Libyan politicians who gain any kind of power. This hostility towards democracy, this hostility to leave their seats.
تعلمين أن دبيبة يعتمد على دعم من المواقف الغربية والأوروبية لصالحه، تعتقدين أن هذا سيغير من واقع الأمور الآن؟
I think so, because Dbeiba is a sinking ship, and it showed that no amount of throwing money is going to keep him afloat. What he's been doing in his time in the GNU is to use public funds to lure foreign states to win them over so they can agree to postpone elections and to keep this installed government in power. So there are foreign governments that would be happy if Dbeiba stayed. We don't know what he has offered them in return. And it's important to keep in mind that legally he has no right to do this. So I think there are foreign states who will be happy with Dbeiba staying for all the wrong reasons. But there are also foreign states that do not want to interfere. They're watching and waiting.
باعتقادك كيف يمكن أن يحل بشاغة أزمة الحكومتين في البلاد؟
So it's too early to say. Dbeiba is refusing to leave. He had sabotaged the elections of December 24. Even prior to the date of the elections, he was galvanizing militias, galvanizing allies to sabotage elections so that he can stay in power. Of course, today he's saying that he won't leave until there's elections. What he doesn't add is that there will never be elections. And that's his plan. So فتحي Bashagha's job right now is to come up with a government, to propose this government to the parliament in 2 weeks' time, around 10 days, and to gain confidence of the parliament for this government. Now, what's going to happen in that point? If Dbeiba refuses to leave, which is unfortunate, there could be two parallel governments. And it really has to do with, is the international community going to respect the will of the Libyan people and withdraw recognition from the GNU, which they should have done actually on December 25th, 2021. We pointed out what was the physical problem in Libya for any government. It's the problem of militias in Tripoli. And now we can have elections, we can have various things politically, but as long as the militias continue to occupy the capital, it's going to be difficult for any legitimate government to exert power. So it really depends on what are the militias going to do. Can فتحي Bashagha convince the militias in Tripoli to put down their arms, join the formal army, and help Libya move forward? Now there's a second scenario. How can you deal with this situation? Because it's been so long, it's been since 2011 that these militias have been in the capital. I think one solution is to move the government institutions to Sirte. So Libya is no longer hostage to the whims of these militias.
طيب في ظل هكذا أجواء ما فرص نشوب اشتباكات مسلحة في طرابلس؟
Absolutely. We saw clashes already late last year with the militias. And I think the chances of that has escalated. Libyans are very, very fed up. And they are very, very angry because they've realized fully what a con the GNU was, and that the LPDF was never going to deliver elections to the Libyan people. And they've been very, very patient. When the GNU was formed, I think Libyans were willing to put bygones behind them. They were willing to give the Dbeiba government a chance. And unfortunately, the GNU, the Dbeiba government, chose to take advantage of this goodwill and defraud Libyans of elections. So there's a lot of anger everywhere that the Libyan people are continuing to be led on. There are governments that are not accountable. Libyan public funds continue to be wasted to an unimaginable level. And that Libyans are essentially not the masters of their own fate. So I think there's a lot of anger, and where there is such a gross miscarriage of justice, there is violence.
ماذا عن دعم مؤسسة الجيش لبشاغة؟ ما الذي يعنيه ذلك؟
Well, the Libyan National Army controls a large part of Libya and definitely most of its assets. The Libyan National Army, like 2.8 million Libyans who register vote, are support of democratic elections. The majority of Libyans want democratic elections, including rivals such as فتحي and others. Everyone wants elections except, obviously, the Dbeiba government. So the army is in support of elections. It is in support of anyone who can deliver elections. And the conflict, the fault line of the conflicts isn't between فتحي and Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar. It's between everybody and the Dbeiba government and their aligned militias. So a lot of Libyan actors, just to illustrate the desire for Libyans to move on, what we saw in December was formal rivals coming together politically to support elections, which was unheard of. And this illustrates the deep desire and will for the Libyan people for elections and to move on. So now the fault lines of violence is not between the army or Bashaga, it's between Dbeiba and everybody else.
بشاغة أعلن عزمه عدم الترشح للرئاسة في الانتخابات المقبلة. الأمر نفسه ربما حدث مع دبيبة سابقا. كيف نثق بأي حكومة بأنها لن تغير من قراراتها بمجرد أن تكون على رأس السلطة؟
There is absolutely no guarantee that he won't repeat the same thing. In fact, I would take that statement with a grain of salt. This is definitely not something people should rely on. That is why I feel it is very important to have elections by June. I think it is too risky to rely on the good faith of people. Power is very seductive, and it is very rare for any man or woman to give up power once they have it. And there needs to be safeguards. The Libyan people have a right to change the staff of the GNU. The parliament has this right. I do not believe in failing upwards or rewarding politicians who fail in their mandate. So they have the right to change the staff of the GNU. The question is, however, we must not lose sight of elections. They have to happen as soon as possible. And I think to have elections by June is an excellent compromise for everybody. I think it would be good for the UN, it would be good for Western countries, and would to keep to this date, and most of all for Libyans themselves. Nobody trusts any government that's going to stay for 14 months and who says they're going to leave after 14 months. So I believe that elections should happen by June and as soon as possible.
تعتقدين أن بشاغة سينجح في اجتياز عقبة اختيار النواب والوزراء وفقا لنظام المحاصصة بين الأقاليم الثلاثة؟
I think so. I think at this stage, Libyans are beyond quotas and so forth. And I think what we need and what the new government needs are capable people who are genuinely sincere about executing their mission. And if there's clearly defined timelines for the elections, this can be passed very, very quickly because nobody would be worried, oh, are we selecting ministers that are going to last for the next year and a half? So I think if we have clear timelines, I think his proposed government is going to be passed without a hitch. He already has the support of the parliament and he met the quorum, the number of MPs who are supposed to be present to vote. So I think he will get his government approved. The question is what's going to happen in these next 2 weeks is Is Dbeiba going to rally militias again to sabotage or escalate violence? What is going to happen in the next 2 weeks? And will the international community respect the will of the Libyan people?
سؤالي الأخير آية عن الفساد. مجلس النواب السنة الماضية تباحث في ملفات فساد ربما تصل لمستوى وزراء في الحكومة. تعتقدين الآن بعد تغيير الدبيبة ستتم ملاحقة هؤلاء؟
Corruption is a human security threat in Libya. I like to say that for foreigners to understand what's going on in Libya is to watch Narcos Mexico and multiply that exponentially. Corruption in Libya is extremely rife. It has been a huge impediment to progress. And there's already been reports, even for this vote, that there has been money given to certain MPs to sway their vote. And what we need actually is a very objective, separate task force to counter and investigate corruption in Libya. The amount of corruption is unimaginable. And this has been going on for years. Not just with the GNU, but with the GNA, there's no accountability whatsoever for where Libyan public funds grow. We are talking about Africa's largest oil producers, and yet its people don't have access to regular electricity or textbooks for school. So you can imagine what kind of level of corruption Libya is afflicted with. So this is, I think, one of the biggest priorities of what Libyans want, combating corruption. And I hope this interim government will focus on that.
شكرا يا بورويلة مؤسسة منظمة كود اون ذا رود للمشاركة معنا في حوارات السياق.
Thank you.
مشاهدينا شكرا على طيب المتابعة. إلى الملتقى.